The day my daughter-in-law stood in my own doorway and told me I had 24 hours to leave, I felt something inside me shatter and rebuild itself in the same breath. I was 62 years old, standing in the home I'd built with my own 2 hands, and this woman, this stranger who'd married my son, was treating me like vermin. But what she didn't know, what nobody knew, would change everything. My name is Lorraine, and this is the story of how I lost everything and gained back my soul. Let me take you back 6 months, to when life still made sense. I lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Ohio, the kind of place where neighbors know your name and wave from their porches. The house sat on Maple Street, with a garden I'd tended for 30 years and a porch swing Marcus had built the summer before Jeremy was born. Every creaking floorboard had a memory. Every wall held echoes of laughter, arguments, reconciliations, and the quiet hum of a life well lived. My husband Marcus had passed away 3 years earlier from a sudden heart attack. One moment he was mowing the lawn, humming along to the oldies station on his radio, the next he was gone. They say the pain gets easier with time, but I don't think that's true. You just get better at carrying it. I'd wake up in the mornings and still reach for him. Still forget for those first few drowsy seconds that I was alone. The house felt too big without him. Every room a reminder of his absence. But I had Jeremy. My son, my only child, born after years of hoping and praying and doctors who said it might never happen. When I finally held him in my arms at 31 years old, after 12 hours of labor and enough prayers to fill a cathedral, I thought I understood the meaning of love. He was my miracle baby, my purpose, my reason for getting up every morning after Marcus died. Jeremy was 34 when this story really begins, working in finance at a mid-level firm in downtown Cleveland. He'd always been what people call a good son. Called every Sunday, like clockwork. Visited for holidays, brought flowers on my birthday, remembered anniversaries. He'd hold my hand at Marcus's grave and tell me Dad would be proud of him. I believed every word. I believed in him with the kind of blind, absolute faith that only mothers have for their children. Then he met Vanessa, and everything I believed turned to smoke. I remember the first time Jeremy brought her home with a clarity that still makes my chest ache. It was a humid July evening, the kind where the air feels thick enough to drink. I'd made pot roast, Marcus's favorite, though by then I was cooking it just to feel less alone, just to fill the house with familiar smells and pretend he might walk through the door any moment. I'd set the table with the good china, the set we'd gotten as a wedding gift and used maybe twice a year. I wanted to make a good impression. Jeremy had been so nervous on the phone when he'd asked if he could bring someone over. So excited and anxious and young-sounding. My baby boy had found someone, and I was determined to love her. Jeremy walked through the door with this woman on his arm, and I swear the air in the room changed. Temperature dropped. Light shifted. Something instinctive in me recoiled, though I pushed it down immediately, ashamed of myself for such an unfair first impression. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Objectively, undeniably beautiful. Glossy black hair that fell in perfect waves past her shoulders, makeup applied with professional precision, designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She wore heels that made her tower over Jeremy, who'd always been average height, and she moved through my modest living room like a queen inspecting peasant quarters. But it was her eyes that caught me. Cold. Calculating. The kind of eyes that see price tags before they see people. She looked at my grandmother's clock on the mantel, my collection of family photos, my worn but comfortable furniture, and I saw her cataloging, assessing, dismissing. All in the first 30 seconds. "Mom, this is Vanessa," Jeremy said, and his voice had this quality I'd never heard before. Nervous. Pleading. Almost desperate. Like he needed me to approve of her more than he needed air. Like my opinion would determine the course of his entire future. "Mrs. Patterson," Vanessa said, extending a manicured hand but not quite smiling. Her handshake was brief, perfunctory, the kind you give to strangers at business meetings. "Jeremy's told me so much about you." I took her hand. It was cold despite the summer heat, smooth in a way that spoke of expensive lotions and salon manicures. "Call me Lorraine, please," I said, injecting as much warmth into my voice as I could muster. "Any friend of Jeremy's is family." "Oh, I'm not just a friend," she said, glancing at Jeremy with a look that made my stomach tighten. Possessive. Triumphant. like she'd already won something I didn't know we were competing for. We're quite serious. That dinner was torture in slow motion. 3 hours that felt like 3 days. Vanessa barely touched the food I'd spent hours preparing, pushing the potatoes around her plate with her fork like she was performing surgery. She cut her roast into tiny pieces but never actually ate them. When I asked if something was wrong with the meal, she gave me this tight smile and said, "Oh no, it's very home-style. I'm just watching my figure. You understand." I didn't understand. I understood that she was insulting my cooking while pretending to be polite, that she was making me feel inadequate in my own kitchen, at my own table, serving the meal I'd made with love and hope. She talked about her job in marketing, some high-level position at a firm I'd never heard of, managing accounts for luxury brands. She dropped names of designers and restaurants and vacation spots like they were prayer beads. Her apartment in the city, a loft in the trendy district with floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture. Her yoga instructor who'd trained celebrities. Her wine club that only accepted members by invitation. Her life was a carefully curated Instagram post, and my modest existence was the before picture. Jeremy hung on every word like she was reciting scripture. My bright, independent son who'd once told me material things didn't matter, who'd volunteered at soup kitchens in college, and talked about making a difference in the world, that Jeremy was gone. In his place sat a man trying desperately to prove he belonged in Vanessa's glossy, expensive world. I tried to join the conversation, to share stories about Jeremy's childhood, to find common ground. Jeremy was always so creative. I said at one point, "Remember when you were 10 and you built that treehouse in the backyard? Spent all summer on it, designed it yourself." Jeremy smiled nostalgic. "Yeah, Dad helped me with the—" "That's sweet," Vanessa interrupted, her tone making it clear it was anything but. "Jeremy's told me he's much more focused on his career now, building real things, adult things." She squeezed his hand. "Right, honey?" "Right," Jeremy said quietly, and the smile faded from his face. At one point, Vanessa excused herself to use the bathroom. The moment she was out of earshot, I leaned toward Jeremy. "Honey, is everything okay? You seem different." "I'm happy, Mom," he said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Vanessa makes me happy." "But are you comfortable? Does she make you feel good about yourself?" "Why wouldn't she?" His voice had an edge I'd never heard directed at me. Defensive. Almost angry. Just because she's successful and sophisticated doesn't mean. "That's not what I meant," I said quickly. "I just want to make sure you're with someone who appreciates you for who you are, not who she wants you to be." "You don't even know her," Jeremy said. "You're judging her based on one dinner." He was right in a way. I didn't know her. But mothers have instincts. We have radar for people who might hurt our children. And every cell in my body was screaming danger. Vanessa returned, and the rest of the evening proceeded in strained politeness. As they were leaving, Vanessa paused at the door and looked around one final time. "Your house is so quaint," she said, the word dripping with condescension. "Very homey, like stepping back in time." I knew what quaint meant in her vocabulary. Small, old, beneath her, working class, not good enough. But I smiled. I smiled because Jeremy looked happy, or what he thought was happy, and isn't that what mothers are supposed to want? Their children's happiness. Even when it tastes like poison in your own mouth. After they left, I sat on my porch swing in the dark and cried. Marcus's ghost seemed especially close that night. I could almost hear his voice. "Something's wrong with that girl, Lorraine. Our boy's in trouble." But what could I do? Jeremy was an adult. He'd made his choice. And I was just the mother, expected to smile and support and keep my concerns to myself. The next few months were a slow erosion of my relationship with my son. Jeremy called less frequently. When he did call, Vanessa was always there in the background, her presence tangible even through the phone. He stopped coming by for our Sunday dinners, always had an excuse, work project, plans with Vanessa's friends, some event he couldn't miss. The few times he did visit, he came alone, rushed, distracted. He'd stay for an hour, check his phone constantly, and leave the moment Vanessa texted. I tried to reach out to him, to maintain our connection. I'd text him funny memories, photos from his childhood, little reminders that I was thinking of him. His responses became shorter and shorter. Haha, yeah. Cool. Can't talk now, busy. Then came the engagement. No warning, no asking for my blessing, no family dinner to announce it. Just a phone call from Jeremy, breathless and excited, telling me Vanessa had said yes. They'd been dating for 5 months. 5 months. And he was ready to commit his entire life to this woman who made him feel small. I'm so happy, Mom, he said. I know you two didn't quite click at first, but once you get to know her, you'll love her. She's amazing. She's everything I never thought I could have. That phrase haunted me. Everything I never thought I could have. Like he'd been settling his whole life, and Vanessa was the prize he didn't deserve. Like he should be grateful she'd chosen him. When's the wedding? I asked, trying to sound enthusiastic. Spring. April. We're thinking a big wedding, something really special. Vanessa has very specific ideas about what she wants. I'm sure she does, I murmured. Actually, Mom, I wanted to ask you something. He hesitated, and I heard Vanessa's voice in the background, coaching him. We're going to need help with the wedding costs. Vanessa's parents are contributing, but there's still a gap in the budget. I was wondering if you might be willing to help. From Dad's life insurance, maybe? My heart sank. The life insurance. The modest policy Marcus had taken out decades ago. Enough to pay off the house and leave me with savings for emergencies. Money I'd been careful with, frugal with, treating it like the last gift from my husband. How much do you need? I asked. Another hesitation. $30,000 would cover the venue and catering. $30,000. For one day. One party. I thought about Marcus, who'd worked overtime at the factory for 20 years, who'd saved every penny, who died thinking that money would keep me safe. But Jeremy was my son. My only child. If this was what he needed to start his married life happy. Okay, I said. I'll transfer it to you next week. Thanks, Mom, Jeremy said, relief flooding his voice. You're the best. Vanessa will be so happy. Not will be so happy. Vanessa will be so happy. I should have seen it then. Should have heard the alarm bells and pulled back. But love makes us blind, and motherhood makes us sacrificial. The wedding was beautiful in that sterile magazine perfect way that has nothing to do with love and everything to do with appearances. Ice sculptures and white roses and a string quartet playing classical music nobody listened to. The venue was a country club I'd never heard of, with marble floors and crystal chandeliers and waiters in tuxedos. Everything was white and silver and cold, like getting married in a jewelry box. I wore the best dress I owned. A navy blue number I bought for Marcus's company dinners years ago. I'd lost weight since then, and it hung loose on my frame, making me look older, smaller, less significant. I felt like a stain on Vanessa's perfect aesthetic. The other guests were Vanessa's people, fashion industry colleagues, her parents' business associates, her sorority sisters who all looked like carbon copies of each other in their designer dresses and perfect hair. Jeremy's side of the church was sparse. A few colleagues from work, some high school friends he'd lost touch with, his father's brother Bernard, and a handful of relatives who'd made the trip. My side looked like a funeral compared to Vanessa's celebration. Her family was there in force, and they made sure everyone knew they were doing Jeremy a favor by welcoming him into their fold. Her mother Patricia was draped in diamonds, her father Richard held court like a king granting audiences, and her younger sister Melissa looked bored and superior in equal measure. During the reception, Patricia cornered me by the gift table. She'd clearly had several glasses of champagne, her smile sharp and loose. You must be so proud, she said, though her tone suggested I should be on my knees with gratitude. Vanessa could have had anyone, you know. Literally anyone. She had a surgeon interested, very successful, very established. And there was a lawyer partner at his firm, comes from old money. But she chose Jeremy. The implication was clear. Jeremy was the consolation prize, the safe choice, the mistake she was making out of some misguided romantic notion. Jeremy's a wonderful man, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Any woman would be lucky to have him. He's kind, intelligent, hard-working. Yes, yes, Patricia waved her hand dismissively. Those are nice qualities. But Vanessa's accustomed to a certain lifestyle, you understand. Jeremy will need to step up. Richard's already offered him a position at his firm, Better money, better opportunities. We're investing in your son's future. She leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming. Let's hope he can provide the lifestyle she deserves. I wanted to tell her that love wasn't about lifestyles, that my son had more kindness in his little finger than her daughter had in her entire perfectly toned body. I wanted to say that Jeremy had been raised with values she clearly couldn't comprehend: integrity, compassion, humility. But I bit my tongue. I bit it so hard I tasted blood. The reception dragged on. Jeremy barely spoke to me, too busy being paraded around to Vanessa's important friends and family. When I finally got a moment alone with him, during a lull in the dancing, I hugged him tight. I love you, I whispered. No matter what. Always. He hugged me back, but it was brief, distracted. I know, Mom. Love you too. Listen, I have to go. Vanessa's father wants to introduce me to some potential clients. And he was gone, swallowed back into Vanessa's world, leaving me alone in the corner with my lukewarm champagne and breaking heart. The first year of their marriage was a slow dissolution of the mother-son relationship I'd cherished my entire adult life. They lived in Vanessa's city apartment, an expensive loft in downtown Cleveland that she'd owned before meeting Jeremy. I saw my son maybe once a month if I was lucky. He'd come alone sometimes on his way to client meetings, and we'd have coffee and talk like we used to. Those moments were precious, rare glimpses of the boy I'd raised. But I could feel him slipping away, feel Vanessa's influence like a tide pulling him out to sea. He started canceling plans. Last-minute work things, events Vanessa had committed them to, her family obligations. He forgot my birthday one year, the first time in his entire life. When I gently reminded him a week later, he sounded genuinely shocked. Oh God, Mom, I'm so sorry. Work has been insane and Vanessa's been planning this trip and I'll make it up to you. I promise. He never did. When I'd call his phone, Vanessa would answer more often than not. Oh, hi Lorraine, she'd say, her voice sweet as antifreeze. Jeremy's in the shower / at a meeting / taking a nap. I'll have him call you back. He rarely did. When I'd mention it the next time we spoke, he'd seem confused. Vanessa told me you called? I thought I called you back. Didn't I? The gaslighting was subtle, masterful. She was systematically cutting me out of Jeremy's life, and he didn't even notice it happening. I tried to maintain the relationship through Vanessa. I'd invite them both over for dinner, send her birthday cards, compliment her hair or her clothes when I saw her. I was trying to win over my own son's wife like I was auditioning for a role in his life. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and I hadn't even realized it was happening. Then came the diagnosis that changed everything. I'd been feeling off for months, tired in a way that sleep didn't fix, achy in joints that had always been reliable, a heaviness in my right breast that I kept telling myself was nothing. Women my age have aches and pains. It's normal. It's aging. But finally, after my neighbor Dorothy insisted I get it checked out, I made an appointment with my doctor. Dr. Chun was kind but direct. She ordered a mammogram, then a biopsy, then sat me down in her office with that look doctors get when they have to deliver bad news. Sympathetic but clinical, personal but professional. Lorraine, I'm afraid it's cancer. Breast cancer stage 2. The good news is we caught it before it spread to your lymph nodes. The treatment protocol is aggressive but effective. We'll start with surgery to remove the tumor, followed by chemotherapy, possibly radiation depending on how you respond. The words washed over me like cold water. Cancer. The word that ends sentences and starts nightmares. I thought of Marcus, how fast he'd gone, how little time we'd had to say goodbye. At least I'd have time. At least I could fight. What's the prognosis? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. With treatment, very good. We're looking at an 85% 5-year survival rate. But I won't lie to you, the treatment is rough. You're going to need support. Family, friends, people to help you through the hard days. Family. I had Jeremy. My son. My only child. Surely, in my darkest hour, he would be there. I called him immediately from Dr. Chen's parking lot, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Mom? What's up? I'm actually in the middle of. I have cancer, I said, and the words made it real. Solid. Terrifying. Silence on the other end. I could hear voices in the background, office sounds, life continuing around my son while mine hung suspended. Jesus, Mom. That's really tough, he finally said. I could hear the television now, too. A baseball game. He'd left work early to watch sports. What kind? Is it serious? Breast cancer. Stage 2. They want to start treatment right away. Surgery first, then chemo. Okay. That's... What do you need? What did I need? I needed my son. I needed him to drop everything and come hold my hand. I needed him to tell me it would be okay, that I wouldn't face this alone, that he'd be there every step of the way like I'd been there for every step of his life. I need you, I said simply. Just for a little while. During the treatments. Someone to drive me to appointments, help around the house. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious, but... Let me talk to Vanessa, he interrupted. We'll figure something out. I'll call you back. He didn't call back. Not that day, not the next. 3 days passed. 3 days where I sat in my house alone with my diagnosis, researching survival rates and treatment side effects and trying not to drown in terror. Then Vanessa called. Not Jeremy. Vanessa. Lorraine, hi, she said, her voice crisp and businesslike, like she was calling about a meeting schedule. Jeremy told me about your diagnosis. That's really unfortunate. Unfortunate. Like I'd gotten a parking ticket. We've been discussing your situation, she continued, and I hated that word situation, like my cancer was a problem to be managed rather than a life-threatening illness. Jeremy and I have decided it would be best if you moved in with us during your treatment. We have space and honestly we've been thinking about making some changes anyway. It works out well timing-wise. Relief flooded through me, so intense I almost cried. They were going to help me. Jeremy was going to take care of me. I wouldn't be alone. Thank you, I said, my voice breaking. Thank you so much. I promise I won't be any trouble. I'll stay out of your way, and as soon as I'm better. There are conditions, Vanessa interrupted smoothly. You'll need to contribute to household expenses, of course. We can't absorb the cost of another person. And we'll need you to help out, cooking, cleaning, that sort of thing. Jeremy works long hours, and I'm very busy with my career. It only makes sense that you'd handle the domestic responsibilities. The relief curdled in my stomach. Contribute to expenses. Handle domestic responsibilities. She was offering to let me live in their home, while I underwent cancer treatment in exchange for being their unpaid maid and giving them money. But what choice did I have? I was facing cancer alone. I had no other family in the area. Bernard had moved to Arizona years ago. My friends were all my age, dealing with their own health issues and family obligations. I couldn't ask Dorothy next door to take care of me through months of chemotherapy. Of course, I heard myself say, whatever you need. Great. Now about your house. Have you thought about what you'll do with it while you're living with us? I hadn't really thought about it. Keep paying the mortgage, I suppose. That seems wasteful, Vanessa said, and I could hear the calculation in her voice. Why pay mortgage and utilities on a place you're not living in? Why not sell it? You'd have that money for medical expenses, wouldn't have the burden of maintaining it. It's the practical choice. Sell my house. Sell the home Marcus and I had built together, where Jeremy had taken his first steps, where every corner held 3 decades of memories. I don't know if I'm ready to. Just think about it, Vanessa said. No pressure. But medically speaking, you're going to be in treatment for at least 6 months, probably longer. That's a lot of wasted money. And you'll need every penny for your medical bills. Insurance doesn't cover everything. She was right, I told myself. It was the practical choice. The smart choice. And I could always buy another house after I recovered. Memories aren't tied to places, they're tied to people. That's what I told myself as I put my house on the market 3 weeks later. The house sold fast. Real estate was hot in our neighborhood, and my modest 3-bedroom in a good school district went for more than I'd expected. After paying off the remaining mortgage, I had $150,000. Felt like a fortune and a lifeline. Security for my medical bills, for rebuilding after I recovered, for whatever came next. I remember the day I signed the final papers, sitting in the title company office, my hand shaking as I signed away 30 years of my life. The young couple buying it seemed nice, pregnant with their first child, excited about the garden and the porch swing. I hoped they'd be happy there. I hoped the house would hold their joy the way it had held mine. When I told Jeremy about the sale, he seemed distracted. That's great, Mom. Really great. Hey, actually, Vanessa and I wanted to talk to you about something. Can you come by this weekend? I drove to their apartment on Saturday morning, my car packed with the first load of boxes from my house. The rest was in storage until I figured out my next steps. Jeremy and Vanessa were waiting in their living room, looking oddly formal. Mom, sit down, Jeremy said. We want to discuss your financial situation. Your finances, actually, Vanessa corrected. The money from the house. We've been thinking about how to best manage it during your treatment. Manage it? You're going to be sick, Vanessa said bluntly. You'll be dealing with chemo, surgery, doctor appointments. The last thing you need is the stress of managing money and making financial decisions. We thought it would be easier if you let us handle it. Jeremy has experience in finance and my father knows investments. We could put the money to work for you, make sure it grows instead of just sitting in a savings account. That's thoughtful, but I think I can manage. Can you? Vanessa's eyes were sharp. Because from what Jeremy's told me, you've never been good with money. You and Marcus lived paycheck to paycheck for years. You don't know anything about investments or financial planning. We're offering to help you, Lorraine. Don't let pride get in the way of practicality. I looked at Jeremy, waiting for him to defend me, to remind Vanessa that his father and I had raised him, put him through college, lived comfortably if not lavishly. But Jeremy was staring at his hands, silent. It would just be easier, Mom, he said quietly. We keep detailed records. Everything would be transparent. But this way you wouldn't have to worry about it while you're recovering. They wore me down. Over the course of 3 hours, through reasonable arguments and subtle manipulation and Jeremy's pleading eyes, they convinced me it was the smart choice. They drew up papers, official-looking documents that Vanessa said her father's lawyer had prepared, giving them joint access to my account. For medical expenses, they promised. Just for medical expenses to make sure all the bills got paid on time. I signed. God help me, I signed. I moved into their apartment on a gray October morning that smelled like rain and regret. They cleared out their guest room for me, and I used the term cleared out loosely. It was obviously their storage space, hastily rearranged to fit a futon that had seen better days. Small, windowless, with bare white walls that felt like a prison cell. A single lamp, a plastic dresser from Target, and that uncomfortable futon that hurt my back even before the cancer treatment started destroying my body. But I smiled. I thanked them profusely. I told myself it was temporary, that they were doing me a tremendous favor, that I should be grateful. The first week was bearable. Jeremy seemed genuinely concerned, asking how I felt, making sure I had everything I needed before my surgery. Vanessa was distant but not actively unkind. I tried to make myself useful, cooking dinners, doing laundry, cleaning the already spotless apartment. I was trying to earn my keep, to prove I was worth the inconvenience. My surgery was scheduled for the second Friday after I moved in. A lumpectomy, Dr. Chan said, to remove the tumor and surrounding tissue. Then we'd start the real battle, chemotherapy to kill any remaining cancer cells. Jeremy promised to take me to the hospital and be there when I woke up. That morning I was terrified but hopeful. My son would be there. I wouldn't be alone. But when the nurse wheeled me into pre-op, it was Vanessa sitting in the waiting area, scrolling through her phone. Where's Jeremy? I asked, my voice foggy from the pre-surgery medications. Emergency at work, Vanessa said without looking up. Some client crisis. He feels terrible about it. I'll be here when you wake up. She wasn't. When I came out of anesthesia, groggy and in pain, a nurse told me my daughter-in-law had left 2 hours earlier. There was a note. Had an appointment I couldn't miss. Jeremy will pick you up at 6. Jeremy did pick me up, rushed and apologetic, explaining about the work emergency and how sorry he was. I told him it was fine, that I understood. But something inside me withered that day. Some last piece of hope that my son would put me first just once when I needed him most. The chemotherapy started 2 weeks later, after I'd recovered enough from surgery. That's when I learned what hell really feels like. Every 3 weeks, I'd sit in those blue vinyl chairs in the oncology center with poison dripping into my veins. The room was always cold, smelling of antiseptic and fear. Other patients would be there with their families, husbands holding hands, daughters reading magazines aloud, sons cracking gentle jokes to lift spirits. I was always alone. Vanessa would drop me off like I was a package being delivered, pulling up to the front entrance and barely putting the car in park. "Text me when you're done," she'd say. For hours later, when the poison had finished its slow drip into my bloodstream and the nausea was already starting, I'd text. Sometimes she'd come within an hour. Sometimes it took 3, and I'd sit in the waiting room with the nurses giving me pitying looks, asking if there was anyone else they could call. Jeremy never came. Not once. Not in 6 months of treatment through 18 sessions of chemotherapy. He was always too busy, the promotion he was working toward, the important clients, the deals that couldn't wait. Vanessa would relay his apologies. "He feels terrible. You know how demanding his job is." But I'd see the charges on my credit card, the restaurants he and Vanessa went to on my treatment days, the expensive steakhouses and cocktail bars. They weren't too busy to go out. They were too busy for me. The treatments destroyed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. My hair fell out in clumps, clogging the shower drain until Vanessa complained about having to clean it. I lost 30 pounds, my clothes hanging off my frame like I was a child playing dress-up. My skin turned gray, my eyes hollow, my hands shook constantly from the medications. I looked like a ghost, felt like one too. The nausea was relentless. Some days I couldn't get out of bed, my body racked with waves of sickness so intense I'd pray for it to end, for anything to make it stop. Those were the days Vanessa would stand in the doorway of my room, arms crossed, radiating annoyance like heat off asphalt. "I need you to clean the kitchen," she'd say. "We had people over last night, and it's a disaster." "I can't," I'd whisper, too weak to even lift my head. "I'm not feeling well enough to." "You're living here rent-free, Lorraine. The least you can do is contribute. We opened our home to you, and you can't even keep the kitchen clean." Rent-free. The phrase echoed in my fevered brain. Rent-free while my $150,000 sat in an account they controlled. On better days, the brief windows between treatments when I wasn't actively dying, I'd force myself to cook and clean. My hands would shake while chopping vegetables. I'd have to sit down every few minutes, dizzy and exhausted. But I'd do it because what choice did I have? Where else could I go? I started checking my bank account obsessively on my phone, logging in multiple times a day with shaking fingers. The money was disappearing. Not all at once, that would have been too obvious. But in steady, significant chunks. $10,000 here. $15,000 there. $23,000 in one transaction that made my heart stop. When I asked Jeremy about it, he seemed confused, almost annoyed by the question. "Medical expenses, Mom. The insurance doesn't cover everything. Copays, medications, the surgeon's fees. That stuff adds up fast." "But Jeremy, I've been keeping the bills. They don't add up to $40,000. "Are you sure? Have you been tracking everything? The hospital, the oncologist, the specialist. There are a lot of moving pieces, Mom. You're sick. Maybe you're not remembering all of them." He made me doubt myself. Made me think maybe I was confused, maybe the chemo brain was real and I was losing track. So I started keeping better records. Screenshotting my bank statements every day. Collecting every single receipt from the pharmacy, every statement from the insurance company, every bill from every doctor. The discrepancy was massive, undeniable. My medical expenses totaled about $23,000, significant, but not devastating. The money missing from my account was over $70,000. $70,000 gone in 4 months, and I had nothing to show for it. I confronted Jeremy again, this time with printed statements with highlighted numbers, with receipts spread across their dining table like evidence at a trial. "Look at this," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. The rage was giving me energy, burning through the exhaustion. "These are my medical bills. All of them. They total $23,000. But $70,000 is missing from my account. Where did it go?" Jeremy looked at the papers, his face pale. I'll have to ask Vanessa. She's been managing." "No," I interrupted. "You both are managing it. Your name is on the account too. Where's my money going?" "I don't know." His voice was rising, defensive. "Vanessa handles the day-to-day stuff. She pays the bills, manages the investments. I just review the monthly summaries. Then get her in here. Now." Vanessa came in from the bedroom where she'd been conveniently absent during this conversation. She looked at the paper spread across the table, at my face, at Jeremy's guilty expression, and I saw calculation flash across her features. Is there a problem? She asked coolly. Yes, there's a problem. $70,000 of my money is missing. Missing? She laughed, a sharp sound without humor. Nothing is missing, Lorraine. It's being invested. It's being managed. Would you like to see the portfolio? I'd like to see where every single dollar went. She sighed like I was an unreasonable child. Fine. Jeremy, get my laptop. For the next hour, Vanessa showed me spreadsheets and investment statements that meant nothing to me. Money market accounts, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Numbers that swam before my eyes made my head ache. She spoke in financial jargon I didn't understand, moving through screens too fast for me to follow. See, she said finally. Everything's accounted for. Invested wisely. You'll thank us later when it's grown. But something felt wrong. The numbers didn't match. The dates seemed off. And when I asked to see the actual account statements, the official documents from the banks and investment firms, Vanessa's smile tightened. I don't have access to those right now. They're at my father's office. He's managing the investment end. But I can get them for you next week. I want them now. Lorraine, you're being paranoid. The chemo is affecting your thinking. Don't you dare, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Don't you dare use my illness against me. I want to see the official statements and I want to see them now. Get out, Vanessa said suddenly. The words hung in the air. Jeremy's head snapped up. Vanessa. No, I'm done. I'm done being accused of theft by an ungrateful woman we've done nothing but help. She wants statements? She wants proof? Fine. She can get it herself from her own apartment, with her own resources. I don't have an apartment, I said quietly. You convinced me to sell my house, remember? That was your choice. Your decision. We simply offered advice. You pressured me. You manipulated me when I was vulnerable and terrified. Prove it, Vanessa said, her eyes hard as diamonds. Prove any of it. Or get out of my home. I looked at Jeremy, my last hope. My son. My baby boy who I'd carried and birthed and raised with every ounce of love I possessed. Jeremy, please, I said, hearing the desperation in my voice and hating it. Please. Tell me you didn't know. Tell me you didn't let her steal from your own mother while she was dying. Jeremy stared at his hands at the table at anything but me. The silence stretched for an eternity. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, Mom, maybe you should stay somewhere else for a while. Until everyone calms down. This is too much stress for Vanessa. Too much stress for Vanessa. Not me fighting cancer and financial ruin. Vanessa, who was being asked to show receipts for money that wasn't hers. You have 24 hours, Vanessa said, her voice final. Pack your things and leave. And if you repeat these insane accusations to anyone, if you try to damage our reputation with your paranoid delusions, we'll sue you for slander. Do you understand? I understood. I understood perfectly. They'd used me, stolen from me, and now they were disposing of me like trash. And my son was going to let it happen. Okay, I said quietly, standing up despite the way my body protested, despite the exhaustion that made every movement agony. I'll go. I went back to my little room and sat on that uncomfortable futon in the dark. My body ached from the chemo, my heart ached from the betrayal, but my mind was clear and sharp as glass for the first time in months. They thought I was weak, dying, broken, an easy mark with no fight left in her. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I had 24 hours. That's not a lot of time, but it's enough if you're motivated. And I was motivated by something more powerful than love, more energizing than hope. I was motivated by rage. Pure, crystalline, focused rage. First, I called my oncologist's office. Dr. Chen's assistant was sympathetic when I explained I needed copies of every medical bill, every insurance statement, every receipt for every treatment I'd received. Of course, Mrs. Patterson. We can have those ready tomorrow morning. Is everything okay? It will be, I said. Second, I called Marcus's cousin Diane. I hadn't spoken to her since the funeral, we'd never been close, moved in different circles. But I knew she was a lawyer now, specializing in elder law. Financial abuse, estate planning, that sort of thing. When I called her cell phone at 9 p.m., half expecting voicemail, she answered on the second ring. Lorraine? My God, how long has it been? Too long. Diane, I need help. Legal help. I think my son and daughter-in-law have been stealing from me. There was a pause. Then her voice changed, became professional, sharp. Tell me everything. I did. For 2 hours I told her everything. The diagnosis, the move, the sale of my house, the joint account, the disappearing money. I sent her photos of my bank statements, the medical bills, everything I had. By midnight, she drafted a lawsuit and had it ready to file first thing Monday morning. This is elder financial abuse, she said, her voice tight with anger. Clear as day. They took advantage of you when you were vulnerable, coerced you into giving them access to your money, and stole it. The fact that you're undergoing cancer treatment makes it even more egregious. Can we win? If everything you've told me is true and you have the documentation to prove it? Absolutely. We'll get your money back plus damages. And depending on how deep this goes, there could be criminal charges. Good, I said. How fast can you move? Fast. I'll file Monday morning. Get an emergency hearing to freeze your account so they can't drain what's left. But Lorraine, where are you going to stay? You can't stay with them, not after this. That was the question I'd been avoiding. Where could I go? I had no money. What was left was locked in an account I couldn't access without their permission. I had no house. My friends were elderly, living on fixed incomes in small apartments. I couldn't burden them with a cancer patient and a legal battle. Then I remembered Bernard, Marcus's brother Bernard, who I'd barely spoken to since the funeral. We'd exchanged Christmas cards, the occasional email, but life had pulled us in different directions. He'd moved to Arizona, started a consulting business, remarried. I hadn't wanted to bother him with my problems, but now I had no choice. I called him at 6 a.m. Arizona time, knowing he'd be up. He'd always been an early riser. He answered on the first ring, sounding surprised. Lorraine? Is everything all right? When I told him what had happened, not everything, just the bare bones. The cancer, the son's betrayal, the stolen money, the eviction, he went silent for so long I thought the call had dropped. Bernard, pack your things, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I'm booking you a flight. You're coming here. Today. Bernard, I can't just. Yes, you can. Marcus would never forgive me if I didn't help you. His son did this. His own son. I don't think Jeremy understands what he's done, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Vanessa manipulated. I don't care who manipulated who. Your family. You're sick. You need help. That's all that matters. I'm looking at flights now. There's one at 7 p.m. tonight. Can you make it to the airport? Could I? I was weak, exhausted, barely able to stand for more than a few minutes. But I was also desperate, and desperation is its own kind of strength. Yes, I said. I'll make it. Good. Martha and I will pick you up in Phoenix. We've got a guest house you can stay in as long as you need. We'll get you through this, Lorraine. I promise. I almost cried. After months of being treated like a burden, like an inconvenience, someone was offering help without conditions or expectations. Someone actually cared. I spent the day packing. Not everything. I didn't want them to know I was really leaving, really done. Just enough. My medications, my important documents, the clothes that still fit my shrunken frame. I moved slowly, carefully, conserving energy I didn't have. Around noon, Vanessa came home. She didn't knock, just walked into my room like she had every right. Still here? She asked, looking around at my partially packed suitcase. Leaving tonight. Good. Where are you going? That's none of your business. She smiled, cold and satisfied. Make sure you take everything. I'm donating whatever you leave behind. And Lorraine? This victim act? It's pathetic. We gave you a place to live when you had nowhere else to go. We managed your money when you were too sick to do it yourself. If you're too ungrateful to appreciate that, then good riddance. I looked at her, really looked at her. At 31 years old, beautiful and cruel and utterly convinced of her own righteousness. She actually believed she'd done nothing wrong. In her mind, she was the victim here, burdened with a sick mother-in-law who dared to question her. You'll regret this, I said quietly. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You stole from the wrong woman, Vanessa. She laughed. What are you going to do? Sue us? With what money? What lawyer? Face it, Lorraine. You have nothing. You are nothing. You're a sick old woman with no resources and no power. We won. She left still laughing. I heard her on the phone moments later, talking to someone, probably her mother, about the crazy old woman she'd finally gotten rid of. But I wasn't crazy. And I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. At 4 p.m. while Jeremy and Vanessa were both out, Jeremy at work, Vanessa at her yoga class or shopping or wherever she went, I did something I'm not proud of but not ashamed of either. I went into their bedroom one last time. Their personal laptop was sitting on Vanessa's desk, closed but not password protected. I opened it, my hands shaking. I knew I didn't have much time, knew I was violating their privacy in a serious way. But they'd violated my trust, my health, my finances. Turnabout is fair play. What I found was so much worse than I'd imagined. In Vanessa's documents folder, organized into neat subfolders, was a complete record of their theft. Property documents for a house I'd never heard of. Real estate listings for a massive home in an exclusive neighborhood 40 minutes outside the city. Purchase agreement, inspection reports, mortgage documents. They'd bought a house. A beautiful sprawling 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house with a pool, a 3-car garage, and a price tag of $900,000. The down payment, $120,000. My money. They'd used my money I'd gotten from selling the house where I'd raised my son, where I'd loved my husband, where I'd built my life, to buy their dream home. But it got worse. So much worse. Behind the property documents was an email chain between Vanessa and her mother Patricia. Printed out like Vanessa wanted to keep it, like it was a trophy. I read it standing in their bedroom, my vision blurring with tears and rage. The first email was from Patricia, dated just before Jeremy and Vanessa's wedding. Darling, are you sure about this? Jeremy seems nice, but his family is so modest. You could have had Gregory, the surgeon, or Michael, the lawyer. Why settle? Vanessa's response: I'm not settling, mother. I'm investing. Jeremy is malleable, easy to manage. His mother is elderly, sick, and has life insurance money. Once we're married, I'll work on getting access to it. Long-term thinking. Besides, Jeremy worships me. I can make him do anything. My stomach turned, but I kept reading. Another email dated 2 months after their wedding. Update on Project Patterson? LOL. Mother-in-law has been diagnosed with cancer. I suggested she move in with us for support. She's so desperate for Jeremy's attention she'd agree to anything. This is perfect timing. Patricia. Brilliant. And the house? Vanessa. Working on it. She'll sell once I convince her it's impractical to keep paying mortgage while living with us. The money will go into a joint account for medical expenses. From there it's easy access. Patricia. What about Jeremy? Won't he object? Vanessa. Jeremy does what I tell him. He's terrified of losing me. I remind him constantly that I'm out of his league, that he's lucky to have me. Keeps him compliant. And honestly, he wants the house as much as I do. He'll convince himself it's fine. I kept reading, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the pages. Email after email detailing their plan. How they'd isolate me, use my illness against me, drain my account slowly enough that I wouldn't notice until it was too late. The last email was dated a week ago. The old woman is getting suspicious. Asked to see account statements. I think we need to accelerate our timeline. We close on the house next month. Once we have the keys and move in, we'll evict her. Let her figure out what to do. By the time she realizes how much we've taken, we'll be settled in our new home and she'll have no leverage. Patricia's response. Well done, darling. I knew you were smart to marry him despite the modest background. Every investment pays off eventually. The house will appreciate, and you'll have your dream home. What happens to her isn't your problem. Vanessa had written back. Exactly. She should have saved her own money instead of relying on her son. Not my fault she's poor and sick. I'll send photos when we're moved in. Planning a housewarming party for December. You'll love it. They were talking about me like I was livestock. Like I was a business transaction. They'd planned this from the beginning, the wedding, the moving in, the stolen money, all of it. Jeremy hadn't been manipulated. He'd been a willing participant, trading his mother's security for a mansion and a woman who made him feel important. I took photos of everything with my phone. Every document, every email, every bank statement showing where my money had gone. My hands were shaking so badly some of the photos were blurry, but I took multiple shots of each page, making sure I had clear evidence. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, closed the laptop, and walked out of that bedroom a different woman than I'd walked in. I left a note on the kitchen table. Short and simple. Gone to stay with a friend. Will send for my things later. L. I called an Uber to take me to the airport. The driver was a kind middle-aged woman who saw my shaking hands and wan appearance and asked if I was all right. I am now, I said. The flight to Phoenix felt like escaping a prison. As the plane took off, I looked down at Cleveland disappearing below me. The city that held my son, my betrayer, my past. I felt something like freedom, sharp and painful and real. Bernard and Martha were waiting at baggage claim, holding a sign with my name even though they knew what I looked like. Martha swept me into a hug that was gentle but firm, mindful of my fragility. You're safe now, she whispered. You're home. They took me to their house in a gated community where neighbors actually smiled and meant it, where the sun was warm even in November, where everything felt clean and new. The guest house they'd mentioned was actually a separate structure on their property, a real guest house with windows and a comfortable bed and a kitchen of my own. It had a view of the desert, all red rocks and impossible sky. Stay as long as you need, Bernard said gruffly, his eyes wet. Marcus would have wanted this, would have expected it. That night I slept for 12 hours straight, the first real sleep I'd had in months. No sounds of Jeremy and Vanessa arguing, no footsteps overhead, no feeling of being an unwelcome guest in someone else's space. Just peace. The next morning I called Diane with the new evidence. When I sent her the photos of the emails and property documents, she went silent for a full minute. Lorraine, this is prosecutable fraud. This is conspiracy. This isn't just civil court territory anymore. This could be criminal charges. Good, I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice. Are you sure? Once we go down this road, there's no coming back. Jeremy is your son. Jeremy stopped being my son when he chose a mansion over his mother. File everything. I want them to feel what I felt. Diane filed the lawsuit Monday morning. Theft, elder financial abuse, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, intentional infliction of emotional distress. She filed for an emergency hearing to freeze my account so Jeremy and Vanessa couldn't drain what little was left, about $30,000 of my original $150,000. She filed for seizure of the house they'd bought with my money. She sent the emails to the district attorney's office with a formal complaint. The legal system moved faster than I'd expected, probably because the case was so egregious. The judge granted the emergency freeze within 48 hours. The house seizure took a week. By the time Jeremy and Vanessa understood what was happening, it was already done. Jeremy called me 6 days after I'd left. Vanessa must have finally given him permission. Mom, where are you? What the hell is this lawsuit? You can't be serious. This is insane. I'm very serious, I said, my voice calm. You stole from me. Both of you. While I was dying from cancer. You used my money to buy a house and live a life you couldn't afford. We didn't steal, we invested your money. In a house. An asset that will appreciate in value. We were going to pay you back eventually. With what money, Jeremy? You can barely afford the mortgage on Vanessa's apartment. Your credit cards are maxed out, I saw the statements. You were going to pay me back with what? Silence. Then, how did you see our statements? The same way you saw my bank account. I looked. You went through our private documents? You stole $120,000 from your dying mother. I think we're past worrying about privacy. Vanessa said you'd understand, he said, his voice cracking. She said you'd want to help us get ahead, that you'd want to invest in our future, that it was just accelerating my inheritance. Vanessa said, do you hear yourself, Jeremy? When did you stop being your own person and become her puppet? When did you stop being my son and become her accomplice? Don't talk about my wife like that. Your wife is a thief and a liar who planned this before she even married you. I have the emails, Jeremy, between her and her mother, planning how to manipulate you, how to steal from me, how to get rid of me once they had what they wanted. You were a mark. I was a mark. She never loved you. She loved what she could take from you. From us. You're lying. I have proof. Diane has it all. The emails, the property documents, the bank records showing every penny that went into that house down payment. You can deny it all you want, but the court will see the truth. He was crying now. I could hear it in his voice. Mom, please. Don't do this. We can figure something out. I'll pay you back. We'll sell the house. Just drop the lawsuit. No. Mom. You had a choice, Jeremy. Every step of the way you had a choice. You chose Vanessa over me. You chose a house over your mother's health. You chose money over integrity. Now live with those choices. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from weakness this time. From power. From finally standing up for myself. The legal proceedings were brutal and public. Diane was relentless, a shark in court. She deposed Vanessa, caught her in lie after lie, watched her smooth facade crack under pressure. She deposed Jeremy, reduced him to tears on the stand as he admitted what he'd done. She presented the emails, and I watched Patricia's face in the gallery go white as her daughter's words were read aloud in court. The judge was a woman in her 60s, Judge Martinez, who'd clearly seen cases like this before. When Diane presented the timeline, the diagnosis, the move, the house sale, the stolen money, the eviction, her expression hardened. Let me make sure I understand correctly, Judge Martinez said, looking at Jeremy and Vanessa over her reading glasses. Mrs. Patterson was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. You convinced her to sell her home and move in with you. You convinced her to give you joint access to the proceeds from that sale, supposedly for medical expenses. You then used those funds, over $120,000, as a down payment on a house for yourselves. When she questioned where her money had gone, you evicted her with 24 hours notice while she was still undergoing chemotherapy. Is that correct? Vanessa's lawyer tried to object, to frame it differently, but the facts were the facts. Your Honor, my clients believed they were making sound financial investments on Mrs. Patterson's behalf. With money they used to buy themselves a house? Judge Martinez's voice was sharp. That's not an investment on her behalf. That's theft. And the emails between Mrs. Vanessa Patterson and her mother indicate premeditation and intent to defraud. This isn't a financial disagreement. This is elder abuse. The verdict came down 8 months after I'd fled to Arizona. By then I'd finished my chemotherapy. My hair was growing back, short and silvery gray. My strength was returning. My latest scans were clear, no evidence of disease. The cancer was gone, beaten back by poison and willpower and sheer rage. The court ordered the house sold and the proceeds returned to me with interest and damages. Jeremy and Vanessa were ordered to pay my legal fees, which had mounted to over $40,000. They were ordered to return every penny they'd stolen, not just the house down payment, but the cars they'd bought, the vacations they'd taken, all of it documented in bank records. Total judgment, $230,000. They didn't have it, of course. They were drowning in debt, having lived beyond their means for years. The house was seized. Their cars were repossessed. Their bank accounts were frozen and drained. Vanessa's parents, facing their own legal troubles for their involvement, cut Vanessa off completely. And I was declared cancer-free just as the verdict came down. Free from disease and free from them. But the story doesn't end there. Stories like this never do. The mansion, because that's what it was, really was appraised at just over $1 million. The market had been good, property values had risen, and the house was beautiful. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, gourmet kitchen, pool, landscape grounds. Everything Vanessa had dreamed of, paid for with my stolen money. The bank was anxious to sell, eager to recoup their losses. Diane called me 3 weeks after the verdict with a proposition that made me laugh out loud. "What if you bought it?" she asked. "Excuse me. The bank wants to move it fast. They're willing to deal to avoid the hassle of auction, dealing with Jeremy and Vanessa's bankruptcy. You could probably get it for $850, maybe less. You have the settlement money, plus what you had remaining. You'd own the house they stole from you to buy." The poetic justice was too perfect. Too right. "Do it," I said. The closing happened in December. I bought the mansion for $850,000, cash from the settlement and what remained of my original savings. Every room they'd planned to fill with their stolen happiness became mine. The master bedroom where they'd have slept. The home office where Jeremy would have worked. The pool where Vanessa would have hosted her parties. All mine. I spent the next 2 months making it home. I tore out all of Vanessa's designer choices, the cold white walls, the modern furniture that looked expensive but felt empty. I painted walls warm colors, hung family photos, brought in comfortable furniture from estate sales and thrift stores. I planted flowers, herbs, vegetables. I made it warm and real and full of life. Bernard and Martha helped, driving up for weekends to paint and plant and laugh. They became the family Jeremy should have been. Martha taught me to cook new recipes. Bernard helped me set up a home office. We had dinners on my patio watching the sun set over my pool, and talked about Marcus, about life, about second chances. I'd been living there for 2 months when my doorbell rang on a rainy morning in late March. It was almost a year to the day since Jeremy had married Vanessa, since my life had been turned upside down. I was having coffee on my covered patio, watching rain in my garden, feeling something close to peace. The doorbell seemed wrong, intrusive, a reminder of a past I was trying to forget. But I answered it. And there stood Vanessa. I barely recognized her. The glossy confidence was gone, washed away like makeup in rain. Her hair was lank and greasy, pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her clothes were wrinkled, cheap, not at all the designer pieces she'd always worn. No makeup. No jewelry except a tarnished wedding band. She looked like someone who'd fallen from a great height and broken on impact. More than that, she looked small, diminished. The woman who'd towered over me with contempt now seemed to have shrunk, her shoulders curved inward, her eyes downcast. "Lorraine," she said, her voice hoarse like she'd been crying for days. "Please. I need to talk to you." "You're violating the restraining order," I said calmly. "I could call the police right now." "Please," she said again and started crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind she'd used on Jeremy. Desperate, ugly tears. Snot running from her nose, eyes swollen, face blotchy. "Please just give me 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Against my better judgment, or maybe because of it, maybe because I needed to hear what she'd say, needed this final chapter, I let her in. We sat in my living room in my mansion filled with my furniture and my life and my hard-won peace. She looked around like she was seeing a ghost, and in a way she was. This was supposed to be hers. This was supposed to be mine, she whispered, confirming my thoughts. "Yes," I said simply. "It was supposed to be yours. Bought with my money, after you left me to die." She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then she broke down completely, sobbing into her hands, her whole body shaking. For several minutes she just cried while I sat there unmoved, waiting. Finally she looked up at me, her face destroyed. "Everything's gone. The house, obviously. The cars. The money. My parents cut me off. My mother won't even take my calls. She says I'm an embarrassment, that I ruined the family name. Daddy's firm is being investigated because of the emails, because they helped us set up the fake investment accounts. Melissa won't speak to me. All my friends disappeared the moment they found out what I'd done." "Good," I said. She looked at me, shocked, like she'd expected sympathy. Forgiveness. The same doormat she'd walked all over. "Jeremy and I are getting divorced," she continued. "He blames me for everything, says I manipulated him, that he never would have done it without me. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am a monster. I don't know anymore." "You are," I said. "You are a monster. You preyed on a dying woman. You stole from someone who was being poisoned by chemotherapy. You wrote emails laughing about it, calling me useful, planning how to dispose of me. You kicked me out with nowhere to go and didn't care if I lived or died." "I know," she sobbed. "I know. I was horrible. I was awful. I don't know what I was thinking. I just wanted the life I thought I deserved, the life I'd always imagined, and you were in the way. I was dying. I know." She was screaming now, hysterical. "I know what I did. I know I'm a terrible person. But I can't take it back. I can't undo any of it. And now I have nothing. I'm living in a studio apartment in the worst part of town. I can't find work because everyone knows what I did. My name was in the papers, on the news, everything. I'm waiting tables at a diner, and people recognize me and leave without tipping. I can't pay my rent. I can't afford food. I have nothing and no one. And you came here because..." She looked at me, and I saw the calculation even through the tears. Some part of Vanessa would always be calculating, always looking for the angle. I came to ask if I could stay here, she said, her voice small. Just for a little while. Until I get back on my feet. I have nowhere else to go. I'll clean, I'll cook, I'll do anything. Please, Lorraine. I'm begging you. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity, the utter lack of self-awareness, the fucking gall of this woman. She'd kicked me out of her apartment while I was dying, stolen my money to buy this exact house, and now she was begging to live in it as my charity case. The laughter bubbled up from somewhere deep, somewhere that had been broken and was now healing, wrong, twisted but strong. I laughed until tears ran down my face, until my sides hurt, until Vanessa was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. You think? I gasped between laughs. You think I would let you stay here? In the house you stole from me to buy. I'm desperate. So was I. Do you remember that? Do you remember me begging Jeremy to let me stay, promising I wouldn't be any trouble? Do you remember standing in the doorway of that windowless room and telling me I had 24 hours to leave? I was wrong. You were cruel. My voice rose, all the laughter gone. You were calculating and manipulative, and you enjoyed it. You enjoyed having power over me. You enjoyed making me small. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you lost everything. But if you'd gotten away with it, if you were sitting in this house right now as its owner, you wouldn't spare me a single thought. You'd be hosting your dinner parties and posting on social media, and laughing about the stupid old woman you'd conned. She didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it. Please, she whispered one more time. I have nowhere else to go. Figure it out, I said, standing up. The same way you expected me to figure it out when you threw me out while I was dying. You're young, healthy, capable. You have your whole life ahead of you. Use it to become a better person or don't. But do it somewhere else. Lorraine, get out of my house. She stood up, still crying, moving toward the door. Then she turned back one last time. I really am sorry. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. It's worth nothing, I said. Sorry doesn't give me back the months I spent thinking my son loved a house more than me. Sorry doesn't give me back the nights I spent alone in chemo wondering if anyone would notice if I died. Sorry is just a word you're using to try to manipulate me one more time. So no, Vanessa. I don't accept your apology. I don't forgive you. And I want you out of my house right now before I call the police. She left, still crying, and I watched through my window as she got into a beat-up Honda that was leaking oil onto my pristine driveway. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time, head on the steering wheel, sobbing. Part of me, the part that was still the kind woman I'd been before all this, felt a twinge of sympathy. But I crushed it. Sympathy is what got me into this mess in the first place. Kindness without boundaries is just weakness. She finally drove away and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity, not even anger anymore. Just a strange, empty calm. The chapter was closed. The villain had faced consequences. The story was over. Except it wasn't. Not quite. The last piece fell into place 2 weeks later. Jeremy called, really called, not at Vanessa's prompting, not with her voice in the background. Just him alone, his voice small and broken. Mom, can we talk? We're talking now. I mean, can I come see you? Please. Every instinct told me to say no. To protect myself, my peace, my hard-won happiness. But he was still my son. Some part of me would always see the baby I'd held, the child I'd raised, the young man full of promise. 1 hour, I said. That's all you get. He came the next Saturday. Drove 6 hours from Cleveland to Phoenix. Probably couldn't afford the flight. When he rang the doorbell, I almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight, looked older, worn down. There were gray hairs at his temples that hadn't been there a year ago. His clothes were nice but not new, carefully maintained because he couldn't afford to replace them. We sat on my patio, the desert sun warm on our faces, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. He looked around at the property, the pool, the gardens, the beautiful home that was supposed to be his, and I saw shame wash over his features. This is beautiful, Mom, he finally said. You've made it really beautiful. Thank you. I'm sorry, he said, his voice cracking. I'm so sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve to talk to you. But I needed you to know I'm sorry. For everything. Why now? I asked, my voice flat. Why are you sorry now when you've lost everything? Would you be sorry if you still had the mansion and the cars? Would you be sorry if the theft had never been discovered? He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. I don't know, he said finally, and I respected the honesty. Maybe not. Probably not. Vanessa made me feel like I deserved more than I had. Like I'd been settling my whole life. Like you were holding me back somehow, keeping me from the life I could have had if Dad had made more money, if we'd lived in a better neighborhood, if I'd gone to a better school. So you decided to take what you thought you deserved. Yes. He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. God help me, yes. That's what I did. That's who I became. Vanessa made me feel important, made me feel like I could be someone special, and I was so desperate to keep her that I'd do anything. Including betraying you. You didn't just betray me, Jeremy. You stole from me while I was dying. You kicked me out with nowhere to go. You chose a house over your mother's life. I know. He was sobbing now, shoulders shaking. I know what I did. I replay it every day. Every morning I wake up and remember, and I hate myself. The look on your face when we told you to leave, I see it every time I close my eyes. You looked so broken, so betrayed, and I just sat there and let it happen. Why didn't you stop her? Even at the end, you could have stopped her. Because I was weak, he said simply. Because Vanessa made me feel strong, and standing up to her would have made me feel weak again. Because I was terrified she'd leave me if I chose you over her. Because I'm a coward. The honesty was brutal, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but something softer than the rage I'd been carrying. What happened to you? I asked quietly. You used to be so kind. You used to volunteer at homeless shelters. You used to tell me that money didn't matter, that people did. When did that change? Jeremy wiped his eyes, took a shaky breath. I don't know. Gradually, I think. Working in finance, being around people with money, seeing what they had. Then Vanessa came along and she was so far out of my league, at least that's what she always told me. And I felt like I had to prove I could give her the life she wanted. I got caught up in keeping up, in trying to be someone I wasn't. She planned it from the beginning, you know, I said. The emails between her and her mother. She targeted you because you were malleable. She married you to get access to my money. You were never a person to her. You were a mark. He nodded, fresh tears falling. I know. I read the emails during the discovery, finding out that everything she'd said to me, every time she told me she loved me, it was all calculated. All manipulation. I was so desperate to believe someone like her could love someone like me that I let her turn me into someone I hate. Do you love her? I asked. I don't know if I ever really did, he said. I think I loved the idea of her. The status, the validation, the feeling that I'd won something by getting her to marry me. But love? Real love? No. Real love doesn't make you abandon your dying mother. We sat in silence for a while. A hummingbird came to my feeder, its wings a blur, there and gone in an instant. The desert wind rustled through the palm trees Bernard had helped me plant. I'm not going to give you money, I said finally, or let you move in, or forgive you just because you drove out here and said sorry. I know, but I'm not going to cut you off completely either. If you want to rebuild, if you want to actually become the man I raised you to be instead of the man Vanessa turned you into, I'll be here. Not as a bank account, not as a doormat, not even as the mother I used to be, but as someone willing to watch you do the work and see if you're serious. What does that mean? It means you call me once a week. Not when you need something, not when you're in crisis, but just to talk. To maintain a relationship. It means you go to therapy, real therapy, to figure out how you became someone who could do what you did. It means you pay back every penny you stole, even if it takes the rest of your life. It means you rebuild yourself from the ground up. And you do it without expecting me to make it easier. I can do that, he said quietly. I want to do that. We'll see, I said. Talk is cheap, Jeremy. I've learned that the hard way. Show me through actions over time. Prove to me that my son is still in there somewhere. Underneath all the damage Vanessa did and you let her do. He nodded, wiping his face. Can I ask, are you okay? Really okay? The cancer. Cancer-free for 6 months now. Clear scans, good prognosis. I'm healthier than I've been in years. I'm so glad, Mom. So glad. No thanks to you. He flinched but didn't argue. You're right. No thanks to me. But I'm still glad. We talked for another hour. Not about the theft or the betrayal or the lawsuit. About smaller things. His new job, working for a small accounting firm for a fraction of what he'd made before. His new apartment, a one-bedroom in a neighborhood he'd once have looked down on. His therapy sessions, which were apparently brutal and necessary. When he left, he hugged me carefully like I might break or push him away. Thank you for seeing me, he said. I know I don't deserve it. You don't, I agreed. But maybe someday you will. I watched him drive away in his elderly Camry, back to his reduced life, his consequences, his chance at redemption. I didn't know if he'd actually change, if he'd do the work necessary to become trustworthy again. That was his journey, not mine. Mine was already complete. The months that followed were the happiest I'd had in years. Maybe ever. I threw myself into making my house a home, into building a life that was mine alone. I started a garden, tomatoes and peppers and herbs that flourished in the Arizona sun. I volunteered at the local cancer center, talking to newly diagnosed patients, offering them hope and honesty about the journey ahead. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage, during my son's childhood, during the years of being so focused on others that I'd forgotten myself. We had book clubs and movie nights and long dinners where we talked about everything and nothing. Bernard and Martha became my family in a way Jeremy never had been. They were there without expectation, loving without condition, helping without keeping score. That's what real family looks like, I learned. Not blood or obligation, but choice and presence. I dated a little, though nothing serious. A retired teacher named Frank who made me laugh. A widower named Carl who understood loss. I didn't need a man to complete me, I was already whole, but it was nice to remember I was still a woman, still desirable, still capable of connection. The house became known in the neighborhood for its warmth. I hosted dinners, community meetings, a support group for cancer survivors. The rooms that Vanessa had planned to fill with Instagram-perfect emptiness were filled instead with laughter and tears and real human connection. 1 year to the day after I'd bought the house, I threw a party. Not a housewarming, I'd been living there for months, but a celebration. A celebration of survival, of justice, of second chances. Bernard and Martha came, of course. My friends from book club. My fellow cancer survivors. My neighbors. Dr. Chun, who'd guided me through treatment with such compassion. We filled my backyard with lights and music and food. We swam in the pool Vanessa had picked out. We laughed and told stories and toasted to life and resilience, and the beautiful unpredictability of justice. Jeremy called that morning. Our weekly call, which he'd never missed in 3 months. I know what today is, he said. 1 year since you bought the house. I just wanted to say, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you took back what we tried to steal from you. I'm glad you're happy. Thank you, I said and meant it. I sent something. Should arrive today. It's not much, but I wanted you to have it. The package came that afternoon. Inside was a photo album handmade with pictures I'd thought were lost forever. Me and Marcus on our wedding day. Jeremy as a baby, chubby and laughing. Family holidays, birthdays, ordinary Tuesdays that became precious because they were captured. And a letter handwritten on nice paper. Mom, it read. I can't give you back the time we lost or the trust one broke. But I can give you back these memories. I found them in storage boxes at Vanessa's parents' house. They'd taken them when we sold your house, thinking they might be worth something. They weren't worth anything to them. But I know they're worth everything to you. I'm paying back your money, $500 a month every month until it's done. It'll take me years, maybe decades. But I'll do it. I'm also paying forward. I volunteer now at a nursing home, spending time with elderly people who don't have family. It doesn't make up for what I did to you, but maybe it helps balance the scales a little. Maybe it makes me a little more like the person you raised. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm trying. Jeremy. I cried reading that letter. Not from forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that yet, might never be ready, but from hope. Hope that people can change, that consequences can teach, that my son might still become someone I could be proud of. At my party that night, surrounded by people who actually loved me, I made a speech. I hadn't planned to, but the moment felt right, felt necessary. A year ago, I said, raising my glass of sparkling cider. I was homeless, broke, and fighting for my life. Cancer in my body, betrayal in my heart. Nothing but rage and determination keeping me going. Today I'm cancer-free. I'm financially stable. I'm surrounded by people who love me without conditions or expectations. And I'm standing in a mansion that was meant to be my punishment, but became my palace. Everyone cheered, clinked glasses, but I wasn't done. I learned something through all of this. I learned that kindness without boundaries is just weakness. That forgiveness without accountability is just giving people permission to hurt you again. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no, set a boundary, and enforce it with steel. I looked around at all these beautiful faces, friends old and new, family chosen and found. I also learned that we're not defined by what happens to us. We're defined by how we respond. I could have stayed broken. I could have let Vanessa and Jeremy's betrayal destroy me. But I chose to fight. I chose to demand justice. I chose to take back everything they tried to steal: my money, my dignity, my life. More cheers, more clinking glasses. Martha was crying. Bernard looked proud. So this is my message to anyone listening, anyone who's ever felt used or betrayed or thrown away. You're not too old to start over. You're not too broken to fight back. You're not too kind to demand justice. Take your power back. Set your boundaries. Build your life on your terms. I raised my glass higher. To second chances. To justice. To mansions built on the ruins of other people's greed. And to knowing, really knowing, that you're worth fighting for. The party went late into the night. When everyone finally left and I was alone in my beautiful, hard-won home, I walked through the room slowly. Each space held new memories now. Better memories than Vanessa had ever planned for them. I thought about her sometimes, wondered how she was doing. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she'd moved to another state, trying to start over where people didn't know her story. Good for her, I supposed. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption, even if they have to earn it far away from the people they hurt. I thought about Jeremy more often. Our weekly calls were becoming easier, less weighted with guilt and resentment. He was doing the work, therapy, volunteering, paying back what he'd stolen. Slow work, hard work, the kind that doesn't have shortcuts or easy answers. Maybe someday we'd have a real relationship again. Maybe not. Either way, I'd be okay. Because that's what I'd learned through all of this. I'd be okay. Not because of anyone else. Not because my son redeemed himself or Vanessa suffered enough or justice was perfectly served. But because I discovered something in myself during those dark months. Something steel strong and diamond hard and absolutely unbreakable. I discovered that I was enough. Just me, just Lorraine, without Marcus or Jeremy or anyone else to define me or validate me or give me purpose. I was enough all by myself. And that knowledge, that truth, was worth more than any mansion, any amount of money, any apology or redemption or justice. I was 64 years old, cancer-free, and finally free in every way that mattered. Did I do the right thing? Taking them to court, taking everything back, refusing to let Vanessa stay when she was desperate, making Jeremy work for years to earn back even a fraction of trust? Some people might say I was too harsh, that I should have shown mercy, that family is supposed to forgive. But here's what I learned through all of this. Mercy without justice isn't mercy. It's just enabling. Forgiveness without accountability isn't forgiveness. It's just giving people permission to do it again. And family isn't supposed to destroy you and expect you to smile through it. I was kind for 62 years. I was understanding and accommodating and self-sacrificing. I put everyone else first, swallowed my needs, made myself small so others could feel big. And look where it got me, robbed and abandoned by my own son while I was fighting cancer. So yes, I fought back. I demanded justice. I took back what was mine and refused to apologize for it. I set boundaries made of steel and enforced them without wavering. And in doing so, I didn't become cruel or heartless or vindictive. I became strong. I became whole. I became myself. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and even for the people who hurt you, is to let them face the consequences of their actions. To refuse to rescue them from the pain they caused. To stand firm in your worth and demand that others respect it too. Jeremy needed to lose everything to understand what really mattered. Vanessa needed to face public shame and genuine consequences to maybe, possibly, become a better person. And I needed to fight back, to reclaim my power, to prove to myself that I was worth fighting for. We all got what we needed, even if none of us wanted it at the time. I'm sitting here on my terrace now, watching the sun set over the desert, painting the sky in colors that don't have names. My garden is thriving. My scans are still clear. My bank account is healthy again, rebuilt from the ashes of theft and lies. My home is full of warmth and light and memories I'm choosing to make. This mansion, this beautiful, hard-won palace, was supposed to be my punishment. Vanessa's trophy purchase with my suffering. But it became my greatest victory instead. Every room is a reminder that I fought back and won. Every sunset over my pool is proof that justice is real and consequences matter. Every laugh echoed off these walls is evidence that joy is possible after betrayal. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm not a doormat or a piggy bank or someone's inconvenient mother. I'm Lorraine Patterson, cancer survivor, mansion owner, woman who took her power back from people who thought she was too weak and too kind to fight. I was weak. I was kind. But I was never too anything. Just strong enough when it mattered most. Just fierce enough to save myself when no one else would. Just stubborn enough to refuse to let betrayal be the end of my story. And if there's anyone out there listening, anyone who's ever felt invisible or used or thrown away, know this. It's never too late to take your power back. It's never too late to demand justice. It's never too late to discover that you're worth fighting for. You are enough, just as you are. And anyone who makes you feel otherwise doesn't deserve a place in your life, even if they share your blood. Did you like my story? Which part moved you the most? Have you ever had to choose between being kind and being strong? Have you ever had to cut off family to save yourself? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And your stories inspire me to keep sharing mine. Don't forget to subscribe for more life stories like this. Real experiences from real people who've survived real betrayals and come out stronger on the other side. We're all in this together, learning from each other's pain and each other's victories. With love and respect, and the reminder that you deserve better than people who only want what you can give them. Auntie Helen Stories.